Good evening. Welcome to the October 17th Village Board regular meeting. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of the Republic.
Trustee Bazemore, Trustee Codman,
Present.
Trustee Levin, Present. Trustee Herrera, Mayor Garrity.
Present.
Okay, we begin with a public hearing in the matter of the village's current community development block grant project under the New York State Community Development Block Grant Program. Is there anyone here to address the board? on
This is
subject?
just for folks who want to address the board about the community block grant project. We have to go through each public hearing
Yes.
individually.
Perhaps we could say what it's all about.
Be happy
Yes.
to. Members of the board, this public hearing is required by the state and the federal government. It is with regard to the completion of the CDBG block grant, which is from 2015, for two properties that were worked upon by IFCA. And as part of the final audit project, we are required to have this public hearing. We're also conducting a final subrecipient audit, which will be done. But this hearing was required to be done by the end of October, and we're complying with the state's requirements to do that, and that's the reason for the public hearing.
Thank you. Folks may have been aware in the last week or two, there was an announcement that the HUD grants have now been restructured again to be more similar to how we had known them years ago. When this block grant came out, 2015, it was a different structure, the way that we were able to access it, and we did the application on behalf of IFCA and worked with them for the upgrades of two of their properties. But as folks know, we made applications this year, and I hope we will be hearing sometime in the not too distant future. Victoria is nodding her head because I think you were involved in both. Oh, is it January? Is that when we're expecting it? Okay, good. Well, fingers crossed that that works out. This is really crossing T's and dotting I's with this particular one.
Right.
All right. Anyone else with comments? Oh, have we moved to close the public hearing?
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Would anybody like to second that motion that we close the public hearing on the CDBG grant? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, next moving on to the next public hearing, 2018 sidewalk, driveway, apron, and curb assessments for 2018. Is there anyone here to address the board on this matter?
Mayor, if I might,
Please.
this involves just one sidewalk and one individual at 243 Spring Street. The total is $4,153, and in fact, this property owner requested that the work be done by the village. So that's the reason. It is the only assessment for 2018.
Oh, that's fortunate. Anyone with a motion to close the public hearing on driveway, apron, and curb assessments for 2018?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Clerk.
Okay, and next we have another public hearing in the matter of Local Law 10 of 2018, entitled A Local Law Amending Chapter 17 Ethics Code of the Village of Austin Code. Is there anyone here to address the board on this public hearing?
Well, let's take a motion to close the public hearing, and then after we have a second, if anyone wants to comment on what we have here, we can.
So moved.
Second. We're closing the public hearing on this. This will come up for a roll call vote, I assume,
In our
Two-
first
in
meeting
2
in
weeks?
November.
Okay. Well, Rika, you were particularly, oh no, I guess not with this particular one. Stuart, you were the one who was more involved with this because this was in response to concerns that had been raised in a particular instance.
Right, there had been a complaint, and the ethics board did a lot of work on this and thought that there should be a slight change to the village's code of ethics, specifically relating to work by former employees of the village. It has broadened the definition as to when those employees can and cannot appear before particular boards. It's more in line with what is found in other municipalities. And I know there was a presentation to this board by Peter Madison, the chair of the Board of Ethics.
All right. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Okay, moving right along to the next public hearing. A local law, proposed local law number 7, amending chapter 178 noise of the Village of Austin Code. Is there anyone here to address the board on this public hearing?
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Katie Milcarrick Burke. I'm a homeowner in the Village of Ossining. Thank you again for continuing the public hearings on the proposed leaf blower ordinances. I come before you to respectfully ask that you pass this legislation. The legislation proposed is a thoughtful and sensible compromise. By now, you've received quite a bit of information on the harms of these types of gas engines, mainly telling us what we already knew, that they are incredibly noisy and dirty. Mainly put, they are a public health nuisance and crush neighborly relations. We heard from a public health pediatrician and also from valuable stakeholders in our community, including Green Ossining. You have the opportunity to improve Ossining as a place to both work and live. Let me take a moment to remind everyone that numerous cities, towns, and villages nearby have taken similar steps, and their communities did not collapse and their landscaping businesses did not fold. I see a lot of green lawns and manicured lawns all over Yonkers, Sleepy Hollow, White Plains, etc. But most importantly, you have the opportunity to act on behalf of our environment. Just last week, a much anticipated United Nations report on our world's climate was released. It was written by several hundred of the world's best scientists. The study found our world is warming faster than what was once thought. The report stated that without considerable immediate action above and beyond what we are doing now, in 10 or so years, several 100 million lives may be at stake. According to the report, the number one action required is to severely curb our fossil fuel use. A fossil fuel-free world is the ultimate goal. Our tiny village can play its part, and this is a sensible and fair compromise to do just that. Please curb the use of these gas machines. Thank you again for this thoughtful legislation.
Thank you, Ms. Milkirk-Burke. I don't see anyone else from the public who is interested in commenting. Anybody in the board like to comment at this time?
Yeah, so I did see a couple of comments on social media. There's Greg Galef, there's Jose Ferrero Jr., Laura Carbonaro, Susie Ross, Tommy Reddy, Joseph Capanella, Basin Salo. It's a long thread, so I'm not going to read it. I wanted to, but it's kind of long. So I guess just forward a screenshot to the clerk, and I guess everyone's on that page about Ossining. Some interesting points and some concerns. So I wanted to raise those.
If I might,
Please.
a couple of things. When we last had our public hearing, Trustee Levin had raised a concern. The legislation as proposed has that the restriction shall not become effective until December 16th of 2018. Trustee Levin had asked if that date could be put out. My proposal would be to make it May 31st of 2019, which would be just before June period starts with regard to this. And also with regard to the letter that we received from Green Ossining, they had raised some questions, one about the acreage requirement and also with regard to impervious surfaces. Their suggestion was that on impervious surfaces, perhaps to allow the leaf blowers to work at half speed. I can let you know that is not something I saw anywhere with regard to any municipality in terms of operating the leaf blowers at a lower speed on impervious surfaces. They don't distinguish it like that. With regard to acreage, we do have the half acre in terms of using it or not. And that varies with municipalities. Some basically simply have a ban during the period of time without regard to acreage. Some, as in other municipalities, have restrictions based upon particular types of property. For example, you would be exempt if you're a cemetery, if you're a school, if you're a park. We don't have in this proposal those particular things. We basically go a half acre and below, greater or half acre or greater, I should say, or less than a half acre. And with regard to less than a half acre, that would sunset, but you would not be able to use gas-powered leaf blowers after January 1st of 2021 under the proposal. So I said, Green Ossining had raised these various points. There are numerous types of legislation on this throughout Westchester, but the acreage requirement, as I said, some have acreage and some specifically exempt particular types of property. It is as to the pervious versus impervious and operating at half speed. That is not something that I saw any other municipality. I'm not saying it's not potentially a warranted concern, but it's not something that any other municipality has put into it. Some municipalities have required mufflers for their gas-powered leaf blowers. Some have also required that they be registered or that they be EPA compliant, which makes it, in fact, a somewhat longer process. There's a process in terms of certain types of ones that they would allow and they would not allow. I think there's only one municipality in Westchester. But otherwise, it's similar to what we have here in terms of that. But I said the only suggestion based upon Trustee Levin's comment was to extend the effective date from December 16th of 2018 to May 31st of 2019.
Given that, thank you very much to the community member who came and spoke this week. 2 weeks ago, we heard from a representative from Green Ossining. We have had public conversations last summer when we discussed this legislation before it was in its final draft form with a couple of members of the landscaping business community. And at that time, we had decided we would hold off until October before we actually put the public hearing on the calendar, with the expectation that we would be allowing time for folks to rally themselves and come and talk to us and share their concerns, because we really do want to pass legislation that is going to be in the best interest of the whole community. That's always our goal. I'm disappointed that we haven't had more folks show up, but I think the point that Trustee Herrera was making before, that it is being discussed in a social media forum, unfortunately not in our regular public forum, so we're not all able to hear the concerns together. I am hesitant to suggest closing the public hearing at this time. Is there anybody else would anybody like to make a motion to keep the public hearing open, or do you feel differently that it's not, there's no value to continuing it?
I agree. I just wanted to make some few extra points.
Yes.
The village is considering legislation that wouldn't exempt itself, unless my colleagues have changed their mind. But so I know that I've heard. When it's, so I know that other communities, they don't have to follow their own rules, but we would follow. Because we believe it's a good policy, we would our operations would have to actually comply with that too. The second thing is that we can actually ask formally, as other communities have done, to the school district and also to the county when it comes to their operations, their maintenance, their DPW, their it's almost like a home rule request that was suggested to me by someone in the county, which I thought was pretty interesting. Not sure if it'll be accepted or discussed, but when they do work here or are called here, and whether it's whatever project and they're using, gas powered stuff past our times or in public, that kind of, I think, really addresses it's only selecting certain people and others can get away with it. And so kind of giving an opportunity to have a discussion about how to make it more widespread, how to make it more possible for everyone to actually follow the rules and regulations and timing of it. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up more to the board, possibly for further discussion and or exploration with the school district and the county. Once we get to the point of adopting it,
Yeah, but like, I like the idea, I just don't think it changes for me whether we should close the public hearing or not, because it's, you know, we could close it, vote, and still do all that. I mean, I don't, does one preclude the other? I don't think so, right?
Oh yeah, no. I just
No.
wanted to finish making points because Stuart
Right.
chimed in.
I
when
think it's a
wasn't
good
finished.
idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think it's a good idea to ask others who come here and do work to respectfully follow what we've agreed to. I don't know, and bind them to it, but certainly ask them.
But I do agree to not closing the hearing.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually ready to close the hearing, but I'm not gonna fall over that sword. I mean, if four of us, I mean, I don't know how you feel, John. I can go, I'm ready to close it. I think we've heard everything, but you know, if others feel differently, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could certainly take comments, any written comments between now and we would when we would vote on it. I think that one of my takeaways from the meeting over the summer was the, the very issue that Trustee Levin was talking about, having a phase-in period. I would like to be a little bit, maybe even be a little more generous than that. I think that the businesses all have to make adjustments and changes in the way they do their work. And I think to the extent that we can give them more time to make that adjustment would be helpful. I support the legislation. The notion of it for many of the reasons that our public speaker spoke this evening. I would certainly be in agreement with those things. I think that I think we have to follow. If we're going to pass a law, then we have to be willing to live by the law that we pass, not only for our citizens but for our municipal operations. So I would expect that, and perhaps some kind of a longer term phase in would be appropriate. Those are my thoughts. I guess, Stuart. I guess any alterations or changes or things that we might consider. Obviously, we would take this to. Would we take this to a work session to tighten everything up, or is this the legislation we're living with, or where are we?
Well,
Where are we
if
with in terms of the actual elements of it?
Well, we have what's been proposed. The only suggestion I had made is to change the effective date from the 16th of December until the 31st of May of 2019. But otherwise, this is what the legislation is. That's why we have the public hearing. But if the board wants to have another discussion with regard to that, and there are changes made to local law, we have to renotice it, because effectively you need to be presented with the final version when you're having your public hearing. And so it's whatever the board's pleasure is on that. But if you were to have a further discussion, you could have a discussion at the public hearing at the work session. But if there are changes to be made in what's presented, it's going to have to be renoticed, because it may be different than what is currently before the board now.
And that's not the biggest deal in the world, because now we're talking about at least 6 months away. But one of the questions I hear a lot, I'd like to ask you, Chief Sylvester, while we're on this topic, is about enforcement. And the folks who are very concerned about, if we pass this, what's going to become the state of people's yards. And the question that always comes to my mind is, what's happening in the 14 communities that already have this? And it's not one type of community, because Yonkers started it, but it's a lot of, you mentioned Sleepy Hollow, but it's a lot of small villages and towns as well. So is it just something that they have on the books and is not being enforced? Is it something that landscapers have found another way to deal with it? Is it enough to have the leaf blowers being used during parts of the years? I mean, do police officers and other departments complain about having to enforce leaf blower laws? Is it an
There's
issue?
only one. Am I on? I'm on. Only one jurisdiction that I've really heard from that had any comment of substance, and it was that they spend their entire day chasing leaf blowers. There's at least one community where people call so frequently about the leaf blowers, and the leaf blowers continue to operate, that their officers are now just proactively spending a good portion of their morning just chasing leaf blowers around, while the landscapers in that particular community try to avoid detection. It is a violation. It's something that has to be committed in our presence. So we would have to observe it. So if it's shut down before we get there, that poses a challenge. But that's no different than any other violation that's committed. It's the same reason that people say, folks are speeding on my street. We can't just take your word for it and write a ticket. We have to actually go and see it. So I've heard from one person or more that thought that that was concerned about what our personal opinions of it would be, and that doesn't come into play. We enforce things objectively. If the law's on the books, we have to enforce it, irrespective of how we feel personally, either in support or against. So if it's on the books, it'll be enforced. As far as how, that would be among all of the other ordinances we have that officers would be charged with going out and looking for, and if they find it, they would be charged with enforcing it.
Thank you. I'll ask you offline the name of that community because I'd be interested to talk with some of my counterparts there about their process and what they hear as an elected official in the community. Stuart, if with 4 members of the board, if 2 of us would like to keep it open and 2 of us would like to close it, unless anybody's changed their opinion in the last 5 minutes, what happens?
The motion to close and it's a tie, then the motion would be defeated and then it would not be closed. And it would then remain open for, and then you'd need to have a date for it to be open because you can't keep it open.
Definitely. Date certain.
Well,
Okay, so.
I don't know that any of us feel so strongly about it that we're going to stake everything on it, but who feels the most strongly about their position? Or who feels the least strongly and will change their position?
Well, I don't think we should. I don't think we should close the hearing.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
and
There you go.
I think that should. I think we should consider what Trustee Levin talked about, which is the date in which it come into effect, and I think that's an important thing. And as I said, I would be even more generous, but I'm willing to live with a time frame, allow the businesses to make an adjustment.
So were you saying that, but as far as keeping the public hearing open, are you
Yeah, we need to.
supportive-
I think we need to. I mean, there's no. I mean, if we leave it open, right? People could make more comments, but then if we change the legislation, we have to post a new.
Right.
Has to call for a new public hearing because we're changing the elements of the legislation.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, listen. I mean, if I don't know if there's will on the board to change the legislation, so I'm of a mind to just leave it open, and then perhaps at our next work session we can figure out how to get Trustee Levin's piece on the legislation.
So are you making a
Sure,
motion
yeah.
to close to keep the public hearing open
I am.
until at least
November 7th.
November 7th? Second?
I mean, I'll second it. I'm not, I said, whatever everybody wants, I'm good. It's not, people want more time. I'm just sort of ready to go.
All right.
Anybody?
All in favor of keeping the public hearing open until November 7th? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So moving right along to mayors and trustees announcements.
I'm sure we have some. It's an exciting time of year. Who would like to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Tomorrow night is Thursday, and it's another Organ Groove night at the Ossining Elks Lodge as part of Jazz at the Lodge. Paul Connors and John Doty and Brian Harrington is the guitar player. Starts at 7 o'clock. Come on down, have a drink, enjoy some great music. Start your weekend early. 118 Croton Avenue. Tomorrow night at 7. The Organ Groove. Thanks.
Trustee Levin or Trustee Herrera? Anyone with comments? Announcements? Okay.
One
Oh, please.
quick one. Some of you may have received it. Just want to let others know about it. When I was at the Ossining Fair, they had a Nissan Leaf. I've announced this before. I got very excited by zero emission cars. We drive electric in my house anyway, but it came time to get another one. We loving the Nissan Leaf. The reason I mention it is that program is still going on with the dealer in New Rochelle Nissan. Not that I'm promoting the dealer, it just happens to be the one approved by the county for this very special program that reduces the price by $14,500, which means you can buy a brand new car for less than $19,000. Fantastic car. It's been extended to, which I wish I would have known, it's been extended to January 2nd of 2019, and feel free to email me if you want to see the car, but it's zero emission, which means, by the way, that in New York, when you pass the bridges, you get a special Easy Pass, which costs you pennies to go over versus many dollars, which is another added incentive from our state, which I think is terrific. But there are many incentives, so just wanted to get people out there in electric vehicles.
Good. Thank you. Nothing from you, Trustee Herrera, this week?
No.
Okay.
Just David Carlucci's town hall.
That's
We got the
Monday.
information. So Senator David Carlucci is having a
Oh, yeah.
town
that's right.
hall on Monday. Do you know what time? I don't have the info. I think it was at. Hold on, give me a second. I know that a lot of people want to talk to him and go to it. So that's why I really wanted to bring it up.
No, he said it at the meeting the other night, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I wasn't there. Here we go. Posted.
Bit
Come on,
later.
Senator. Well, it's this Monday at the Austin Community Center in the evening.
Okay. I will just put one last item on your calendar for this. Well, I guess two, because Joe Burton used to always do it for us, and then Marianne Roberts did it for us. And in their absence, I will just let folks know that the Austin Historical Society benefit is this Friday, and this year it is at Travelers Rest. And tickets are, if they're still available, sometimes they're a little tight. But does anybody know if the tickets are still available? I have not heard that they're sold out, so let's assume that the tickets are still available. You have to get them from the Austin Historical Society, so reach out to them. That is this Friday, the 19th. And Thursday, the 18th, is this month's installment of the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series. Very powerful film. I know at least Trustee Hura and I have seen it in this room, maybe more folks, because it had been organized as a workshop screening for leaders in the community to learn about the findings that are the foundation of this film, and then how we as a community can improve the circumstances for folks in our community. It is based on research about how trauma, major stress, abuse of children impacts you for the rest of your life, not just psychologically, but physiologically. It impacts your health as well as your life experience. And so we'll be watching that film, and then we'll be having a panel discussion. Even if you've watched it before, as one of the leaders of the community, well, if you're one of those folks, then you probably have already said that you really want to have a community screening because you want more people to see it, because it's a very powerful film, and so you're likely to come anyway because it makes folks are very passionate about this subject and its importance once they see the film. It's a little bit of a different venue because, of course, this isn't just educators and elected officials at different levels of government. This is a screening that's open to everyone in the public. We will have on our panel an Ossining parent who also was part of the workshop that was organized for the community leaders. Tom McIntyre, he's a professor of special education with Hunter College, and he's an author. We also have Ossining High School social worker Brenda DeEsso and Andrew Bell, who is the program director at the Children's Mental Health for Westchester County. So it's going to be a really terrific panel, and we look forward to seeing many folks in the community join us. 6:30 this Thursday, Darce Theater in the Ossining Public Library. As always, it is free to attend. Madam Clerk.
Okay. Next, we have an administrative report from Corporation Counsel / Acting Village Manager Stuart Kahan.
Nothing for the village manager, who is, I was about to say on assignment, but she's not. She's actually at a conference. From the Corporation Council, I'm pleased to advise that local laws 3, 4, and 5, which relate to parades, one-day cabaret, and are major changes to Chapter 162 of the Housing Code, are now official. They were filed with the Secretary of State, received the notification from the Secretary of State. I will be meeting tomorrow with Building Inspector Joe Agostinelli and members of his department to go over what impact of Local Law 5 is specifically for the building department in terms of the vacant building registry and other issues coming up there. But that is now, I just didn't want to let the board know those 3 laws are now in effect. So if individuals are interested in one-day cabaret licenses, they can now get them from there. And if they're looking for parade permits, those will now go through the village manager rather than coming through the board. So those changes are now in effect, and the formal change will go into the code book probably within the next couple of weeks.
Mr. Khan, can I just confirm, when you refer to them as local laws 3, 4, and 5, that is adopted laws 3, 4, and 5, because they were proposed. They may have been different numbers.
Right. So
Okay.
these are if you were to go to the website, they would be the adopted laws of local laws 3, 4, and 5 of 2018.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Next, an administrative report from Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening. This month, heavy on training. So we have 2 officers right now attending FBI Survival School, which is a patrol tactics. Excuse me. Sorry. Static. Specialty school for patrol tactics survivors. We like to send newer officers to that to give them a little bit more high-speed training. On a similar note, we've just wrapped up our in-house patrol tactics training, which we did with the Village of Croton in order to get some interjurisdictional training in. We'll roll that right into second half firearms, which is coming up starting this week. On the community service stuff, this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And if anybody had a chance to hop over to our Facebook page today, we had filmed a panel discussion with Hope Store, my sister's place, and the district attorney's office, as well as one of our detectives and one from White Plains, because they've got a really a great domestic violence unit down there. This was originally slated to be a public discussion, but after speaking with the advocacy groups, we opted for something filmed and then broadcast because many of the people that may need these resources would be more comfortable watching it from the comfort of their own home or somewhere of relative safety. So there's a lot of great information there. It's about a half hour long, so it's posted to our Facebook page, and we're going to get it up to YouTube as soon as we can get our account straightened out. But it's out there for people to watch, and it's got a lot of great information about not just the advocacy groups, but the public service that's actually available for you. This weekend is the Ossining PBA's 5K at Cedar Lane Park. That's Saturday at 9 a.m. So we'll put out some messaging tomorrow about whatever brief road closure that should take. Hopefully, the faster we run, the faster that opens. But that's going to be Saturday morning, and all of the funds raised for that are going towards scholarships for local kids to attend Ossining day camps. On October 31st, Halloween, we're going to be having our annual Trunk or Treat event on Main Street. That's going to go from 6 to 8 p.m. and lots more information coming out there. And as soon as that's done with the conclusion of Halloween, we are going to cease shaving for No Shave November, where the police department will be raising money then for men's health issues will transition in the month of November. So we will we'll have information on all those things as they come, but give you something to look forward to. And that's all I've got for tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to organization announcements, which I think we can safely say nobody's here for. And village board resolutions, same. So first we have approval of minutes, October 3rd regular meeting. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the October 3rd, 2018 regular meeting as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All
On
those
this
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of minutes, October 10th, 2018 special meeting. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the October 10th, 2018 special meeting as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of voucher detail, October 17th, 2018. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated October 17th, 2018 in the amount of $822,632.79. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Comments on the board?
Sure. The high amount is due to some larger disbursements, about $570,000 into 3 payments. One is for about $194,000 for workers' compensation. It's being charged against our reserve account as part of our workers' compensation insurance fund. The village is self-insured, so we have to have funds set aside for any claims. About $154,000 was to Hazen and Sawyer for engineering services related to the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant project. And the final amount of $222,000 was to the Arbin Group that are working on the Broadway Bridge to rehabilitate the bridge. So,
Big project.
thank you.
Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution calling for public hearing on the Village of Ossining's 2019 tentative budget. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby calls for a public hearing in the matter of the 2019 tentative budget to be held on November 14th, 2018 at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments from the board? I will just remind folks that the budget is going to be presented, the manager's proposed budget is going to be presented the week prior to that. when we are here on November 7th. It's after the leaf blower public hearing. And she will just be handing it to us. It's the first time we're all going to get to see it. Debbie's been spending months working with department heads to put together a proposed budget. And the very first step is to present it to us and to the public. It will be available after that meeting on November 7th. The following week is when we will be having the public hearing, and we will be having it at the beginning of our regular work session on the 14th. And when Debbie does that, she will be beginning with a presentation. And this is something that really speaks well to Debbie's skills with dissecting numbers. And you folks may recall last November, she did a presentation that helped us folks understand exactly where the money in the budget is being allocated and what that means to each of us in our community. It's a very helpful way to understand the budget in real terms, not just line items and numbers. And so I encourage anybody who is particularly interested in the budget to either attend or tune in on November 14th. And if you have any questions or comments that you want us to be taking into consideration when we have all of our meetings, which I know the list of those has been circulated when we're sitting down and we're going over the budget, perhaps not line by line, but department by department, and really delving into what the proposals are from each department. It is helpful for us to know what are the priorities and concerns of community members. And so you can come and speak to us on the 14th after following her presentation, or you can always send us emails at bot@villageofossining.org. Or you can attend the meetings yourself if you would just like to observe those meetings in person, or they will be recorded.
Mayor, I just realized, looking at this, reminded me because the 14th is actually a work session.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd like to just propose that we revise the resolution
Yeah.
because the location will actually be at the boardroom at 16 Croton Avenue. So we'll also change the notification for the paper.
Thank
So
you.
it would read that it would be at the at 16 Croton Avenue at 7:30 p.m. So with that amendment,
Okay.
We need to renew our motion with as amended.
as amended, please. Yes.
Further comments? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Resolution referring proposed zoning map change to the planning board. Resolved that pursuant to section 270-59 of the Village of Austining Code, the Board of Trustees refers to the village's planning board the petition for a map change to the zoning code, chapter 270, filed by Edward Baker and William Baker. And it is further resolved that the Corporation Council shall forward the village's planning board the papers submitted in support of the proposed map change. And it is further resolved that the village's planning board shall issue its report on the proposed map change to the zoning code within 62 days of this referral, and that pursuant to section 270-59A2, the village's planning board shall make inquiry and determination concerning the following items: A, whether the uses permitted by the proposed change would be appropriate in the area concerned; B, whether adequate public school facilities and other public facilities and services, including roads, exist or can be reasonably expected to be created to serve the needs of any additional dwellings or other uses likely to be constructed as a result of such change; C, whether the proposed change is in accord with any existing or proposed plans in the vicinity; and D, the effect of the proposed amendment upon the growth of the village as envisaged by the comprehensive plan and LWRP. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We can ask questions and comments after
Second.
a second. Please, questions and comments on this? Or do we just want to review the process for folks? Because we're not actually weighing in on this at all. All we're doing is asking the planning board for their opinion so that can help inform what we do next.
Correct. Because under the code, that's how it goes. Goes to planning, and then planning makes a recommendation back to you.
All right. Further comments? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, DPW authorization to advertise for bids, contract number DPW 1802, cut and clear 91 trees at the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant. Resolved that the village clerk is authorized to advertise for bids for contract number DPW 18-2, cut and clear 91 trees at the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant to be returnable to the office of the village clerk. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Stuart, this is very brief, but 91 trees is a rather startling number. Can you give us some context for
I
this,
can,
please, sir?
thank you. This is part of the process for the Indian Brook water treatment facility that is going to be constructed. Pursuant to the DEC, these trees must be removed no later than March 31st. That is to protect bats, bald eagles. If we do not complete the removal by March 31st, the Indian Brook Treatment Plant project will be delayed by another year. So we have a window where this has to be done. There are 91 trees. They are of different breast diameter, and they are and some are in very good condition, some are in excellent condition. They are all going to be removed up to 3 feet above ground level. And that is the original, and when construction comes in, then the stumps will be completely removed. The plan, which has been presented to the Town of Ossinings's Planning Board, is that trees would be replaced in kind in both village and town parks to make up for the 91 trees that are coming down that are in the location of where the new plant will be. But the reason this is time sensitive is because we need to let the contract quickly, get them in, and again have the work done by the 31st of March.
Thank you. Your comment that this was reviewed and approved in this manner by the town planning board is worth reminding folks that the village board, the village public works department did go through the town planning board process to make sure that the town government, town planning, anyone in town government who lives in the unincorporated town had an opportunity to ask questions, and there were a number of questions. There were site visits, there were reviews, there were modifications, going through the entire process, though they may not have actually been required to in the same way that a private citizen would have been. But we felt that it was important to go through this process so
Right,
that it was very, very publicly handled, so everybody had an opportunity to be heard.
And I know that because I got a note from Andy Teese, the water superintendent, the town zoning board gave variances, I think, earlier this week or last week. It then goes back to the planning board for ultimate site plan approval. This will be done before the actual work is done, but just has to be done because of the time sensitivity. And as I said, it's a requirement of the DEC.
Very well. Thank you. All those comments on the board further? Okay, Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution authorizing village manager to sign the third agreement to the lease agreement between the Village of Ossining and New Singular Wireless PCs LLC. Whereas the Village of Ossining and New Singular Wireless PCs LLC, tenant or its predecessor, entered into a lease agreement dated April 4th, 1985, and an addendum to lease of the same date as amended by an amendment to lease agreement dated March 29th, 1991, and a ratification and reinstatement of lease agreement dated March 6, 2006, whereby the Village of Ossining leased to tenant a portion of the property located at the Water Tower at Clinton Avenue and Browning Drive, 56 Browning Drive, Ossining, New York. And whereas the term of the current lease agreement expires on April 4th, 2020, and whereas the Village of Ossining and representatives for the tenant have discussed an extension of the term of the lease agreement beyond the expiration date of April 4th, 2020, and whereas the discussions have resulted in a proposed third amendment to lease agreement commencing on April 4th, 2020, for a term of 5 years with 2 additional 5-year terms and an agreed upon rent of $4,284 per month for 120 months, to be followed by a 10% increase in the monthly rent beginning on April 4th, 2030. Now therefore be it resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign the third amendment to the lease agreement. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Does anyone want to comment?
Just want to make sure the public understand who's getting the money here and who's giving, that this is a good thing for the village.
Yes.
Because we sometimes are always the payee, not the receiver. So I think there was some good negotiation. We all believe it's a very good deal for the long term for the village to bring in some money.
Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, continuing business of the board.
Madam Mayor, there is
Please.
one thing if I could just bring up, and that relates to 64 Revolutionary Road. Ferncliff application for the home at that location.
Yes.
I did send to members of the board some of my recent correspondence with Ms. Yurzak. They have apparently entered into an agreement with one property owner to provide additional parking at the location, and they are negotiating with a second property owner as backup. There was also a question raised, I believe, by Mr. Sia at the last meeting regarding snow removal. And that snow removal would be done by staff, or if necessary, they will get an outside contractor to handle that. We have until the 20th of this month to send a letter to the state if there is a position that the village wants to take. The village is not obligated to send any letter, but if it opposes it or has an issue with regard to the location at 64 Revolutionary Road, that correspondence must be out by the 20th.
We had three choices. We could do nothing, as you say, and it will just move forward. We could send a letter saying we are in support of this. And I do think that, at least verbally, we all acknowledge that we are certainly in support of the mission of this organization and appreciated their forthright approach to coming to us and speaking to us in advance. And I, at this stage, I'm very pleased that they were responsive to our chief concern, which was related to parking. And that was something we had to ask about, and because we know it's been a concern that we didn't ask enough questions the last time. There was a home that was a similar use, and there's still ongoing concerns about, and that's a property that has more on-site parking than this one does. Nothing is exactly the same, so I very much appreciate that they did. They are making agreements with neighboring property owners to be able to have parking on site for their staff and visitors. So the choice was to do nothing, to write a letter of support, or to say we have an alternative location for you. And that was never on the table. We never discussed some secret alternative location we had for them. The question would be, do we just say nothing and it moves forward, or do we send a letter of support and thanking them for being responsive to our concerns about parking? I'm posing that question to the board. Do we send a letter or do we do nothing? If we
I
send
would
a
be
letter, what
happy
does
to
it say?
send a letter. I think that would be fine. I think they've done the things we've asked them to do. So why wouldn't we support it informally?
It also gives us an opportunity to put in writing how much we appreciate them being responsive to this, because it is very much a concern of ours, being sure that parking is addressed and that it's not going to become a burden for the neighbors to have a significant amount of increased parking in the neighborhood. So there's twofold. They're doing great work. We want to encourage them, and we know they want to be good neighbors, and we appreciate them for being good neighbors and being responsive to our concerns. So then, is the board comfortable with me signing a letter on behalf of the Board of Trustees to that effect?
Yes.
I want to give you one piece of hesitation here,
Please.
because I'm so supportive of it on one hand, but as a representative for people in the community, I just have to say that it wasn't clear to me who they agreed. I mean, I don't want parking at another private residence where they're probably out of code by having too many cars in a narrow driveway. So it wasn't clear from the correspondence, nor was it clear that the contract's more than a few months or a year. And so we oftentimes do things with all good intentions, but the contracts are really out of our hands, and nor do they have to even do any of this. So I think the letter's a good idea, but the contract could be over in 6 months, and it's sort of like not meaningful, and everything we do sets precedents for other people, is what I've learned on this job. Like literally everything, right? We always refer to what other towns are doing, what other communities are doing, so it's like sort of a driving force. So I'm struggling. On one hand, I really want this to happen because it's great, and they've done their homework. On the other hand, I'm still not feeling really great that the parking solution's been arrived at, because if it's at a private residence where they're not supposed to have 6 cars, okay, so that's a good contract, but it doesn't really serve purpose for that neighborhood. On the other hand, we did go out to the neighborhood, right, Stuart? And you asked the neighbors if there are issues and all that. I mean,
Well,
one
we
neighbor,
noticed a public
there
hearing.
were, yeah, and people were here. So I think the letter is actually a good idea, that maybe we can actually use it as a way to say what I just mumbled through, which is, we really want this to happen, but you've got to come through, because honestly, the ones after this, if this doesn't work, it's going to start getting worse and worse. Want to set the tone of, you've got to be responsible for parking and making sure that things are what they're supposed to be, and not start cutting corners.
Stuart, I just want to clarify. Is there any way that we could stop this from happening? And I'm
The
absolutely
answer is
not
on-
suggesting that we should try and stop it
answer
from
is
happening.
on a scale, most likely, because the way the statute is worded, it is fairly difficult. You would have to essentially be able to demonstrate that the nature and character of the area in which the facility is based would be substantially altered as a result of the facility. And supposition as to what might happen with parking or things like that is unfortunately, according to the courts, just that, supposition. Don't have hard and fast that something's going to happen. In terms of numbers of these facilities, the area of Revolutionary Road, there aren't any others. Tracy Corbett was good enough to essentially map it out. But the village can object, but onus would then be on the village to demonstrate it. It would then go to a commissioner's hearing. We can certainly indicate that, they've indicated that they're going to be having, arrangements with regard to parking. We expect that they will do that. They have already said that they will go before the Historic Preservation Commission if they need to. All that can be put into the letter
Great.
as part of, our report for the project with regard to that. But as Trustee Levin appropriately notes, it is a private agreement between two entities that doesn't really involve the village, so we don't get involved with their parking. It is certainly hoped that they're not going into a house that only permits 2 spaces, and they're basically doing that. I don't know who the private property owner is, but I can certainly include something to the effect, what we're hoping that they will do as well.
I think it's an opportunity for us to do all of the things that we've talked about here, which is to provide our enthusiastic support for their mission. And we look forward to them having great success for their residents here in our community. And we are very pleased with their proactive efforts to find parking at our request. And we are confident that they will be making arrangements that will be adequate for providing off-street parking for their staff and their visitors that will not create an undue burden on the neighbors. It gives us the opportunity to be supportive and put in writing what our concerns are and thank them for being so responsive to them.
Happy to do that, sure.
Whatever language you and the manager's office comes up with, I'll review it and sign it sometime before the 20th, which is Saturday, oddly enough.
Oh.
Okay. Anything else for continuing business?
Okay, next new business of the board.
Anything?
I did have it, and it should have been under continuing business. Just a follow up. I still don't see all the open and vacant village positions on the personnel page.
The personnel department is working on putting something together that's appropriate for the website.
Okay.
And once I receive that, it'll go up.
And is that going to be a process that's going to be used for, like make sure that positions that have been discussed or open are posted in a time sensitive manner in the future?
I believe so. I think it's just a matter of the personnel director understanding that. So we'll talk to her about that. Make sure she knows. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was continuing business, and I don't think we have any news business. Do we have any new business?
Well, it's not so much new. I just I forgot to mention earlier. There was a meeting on Monday, and George Castanos, who is on the Human Rights Commission. I'm not going to say it as eloquently as he did, Chief, but they're using this police department as a model in discussions about diversity and fairness because of that course that you budgeted for and did. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of that course with the professor that was.
So go ahead.
It was implicit bias training.
Right, so they're using that as a model for other agencies, I believe across the county is what he said. You were there. So I had actually reached out to George, just we did not connect. I actually wanted him to come tonight and just explain it and say a few words, but I'm sure he'll hear this and send your folks like a nice letter. I think it's a huge compliment. He was really proud of that, being, an Ossining representative. So I wanted to share that with you and the public, which I think is a great use of the budget that we agreed to and approved and the work that was done. So that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Madam
we're
Clerk.
good? Okay, so moving on to visitor recognition. Is anyone here to address the board?
I believe we
There
do
you
have
are.
someone. The floor is yours, sir.
How are you? Jermaine Smith, 77 Stone Avenue. Thank you for having me. I'm here. A couple questions I have. There was a rec advisory board meeting last night, and it's been an ongoing conversation over the last year Director of Project 105 Athletics, and over the last year, I've been asking questions about upgrades to the parks, and it seems to be all the upgrades to the parks are being done around the basketball courts. I've been in Ossining for about 40 years, and I don't think I've ever seen an upgrade to any of the courts in Ossining at all that I know of, other than replacement of rims. I've gone around, I've taken pictures of vets and looking at the other parts. Vets, the rims are rusted. There's cracks in the pavement. Nelson Park is probably the best park, but that one also has issues. The court is not level in parts. There's a flooding issue when it heavy rains. I mean, I've taken a picture and there's been like a foot of water in the corner of on one of the courts. Half the lights work, and to my understanding, the tennis lights and the basketball court lights can't be on at the same time. And I've been out there several nights in a row, and we've had probably like 10, 15, 20 kids. Half of the court, there's some kids playing soccer. Half the court, there's kids playing basketball. 6:30, 7 o'clock, they have to leave because it's dark and it's unsafe for them at that point. But the tennis lights are on, and again, several pitches when no one's on the tennis court constantly. It's been several nights when tennis lights are on, there's no one's on the court. So question is, I guess, around upgrades to the basketball courts, and if something can be done. And I'm constantly being referred back to the village board anytime I ask about budgets and, where's the money being spent and how it's being spent. And, I'm just curious. So I'm coming to ask the parents, how can we plan the yard, and kind of trying to figure out how can we get upgrades to the parks and things like that. And one of the other questions I have is, part is, I guess, is one, it's all in encompassing all in one. With the upgrades, we have things like, at, I believe it's Veterans Park, where there's stairs built to the baseball court. There's been bleachers put into the parking lot, the parking spaces, so people can watch the games. And not until we had an event at the park in Nelson, we kept pushing and pushing, had they done that for the basketball court, which again has been here for years. There's never been bleachers there, so parents can watch the kids play, or if there's an event or something going on. There's never been anything done with that. The entire Snowden Park has been upgraded around the basketball court. There's been new parking spots, new lights, skate park, playground, and the basketball court is the only thing that hasn't been touched yet. And I'm just curious why is that, and whether or not we can do something about that. Just trying to figure that out.
Well, let me first say thank you very much for coming and for highlighting what seems to be a pattern, because you're particularly focused on what's going on in the basketball court. So that's exactly what you're seeing, and it's not a great story that you're telling. So thank you for unfortunately telling it. And you're coming at a really good time of year, because now is the time that we make the decisions, and that the Parks Department will come to us and say, this is what we're prioritizing in the budget for next year. These are the projects we think we can handle, and whether that's coming out of general fund money or in lieu of parkland fund money, it's a good time of year for us to be talking about it. The only specific instance where I will offer a little explanation is Snowden Park, because the recent work that was done with the playground and the parking spots was done because of the county's sanitary sewer line that needed to be corrected and repaired, and been trying to get that done for, I think, a decade. It started that project, but that was finally they had to. It was 6 years ago that we alienated the playground so that the work could be done under it, and then it was replaced in improved condition. So all that was actually done as part of the county restoration, and then they did the paving up to Matilda. That was all part of the restoration for that sanitary sewer project. So that was just bonus that it got done. And I think the skate park, that was like 7 years ago. That's not that.
Yeah, but
But you're saying the basketball courts have been even longer
I've
in
been
need.
here like I
Yes.
said, I've been in Ossining just about my whole life, and I've never seen the basketball court upgraded at any point. So I was just curious. There's never been anything like that I can remember.
All good
Possibly.
points. My kids play basketball in all those sports, so I am somewhat familiar with what you're expressing, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. Did you want to comment
Yeah,
on
I
that,
just,
Rika?
just for the record, because the public thing, Monday night was the meeting. It may just seem like it lasted for 2 whole days, but, and it was really, really good meeting. And you were told that, the board decides. The superintendent was very clear, but this is great because I'm considering this one of our first inputs into our budget process of looking at it. And yeah, I was a little bit surprised as well, but he had some reasons, and he wants to put things in the budget regarding the basketball. And the issue between the lights is an engineering issue, which I think was explained. But I do thank you for coming, and I know how frustrated you were that night.
And like I said, these are not new issues. So even with the
Oh,
lights,
no,
it's been
I
brought up
wasn't
several
implying that they
times.
are.
Okay, yeah.
No, not implying that you're the first one to bring it up or anything like that. but I don't think people around the table were aware that they've never been upgraded, as you've been stating. That's
And my last question is regards to Veterans Parks as well, and with the baseball field. There's been
Yeah.
advertisements put around the field, and
Mm.
at one point during that meeting, we were told that that money went to youth organizations, and then it was kind of walked back that it goes to baseball. I'm just curious to how that happened, and what the process with that was, and I'm not sure. I was curious to that process.
Yeah, if baseball can do it, why can't anybody else? Stuart, do you have any knowledge about how that, because it came up again when we
Yeah.
talked about other advertising on public property, and I'll tell you, my kids play baseball, so I go to baseball fields all over the region,
And it all
and for
happened.
some reason, it's always at baseball fields, and
Yeah.
I don't know what the legal allowance for that is, and if other sports just don't have the easy venue, or how that is structured. Do you know?
Uh, no, you see it primarily at baseball. I know
because
you,
they have a fence.
well, that's one. But in terms of
Yes.
where the money goes and who actually gets the money, that's not something I have information on right now.
Or why it's allowed?
So like, have we authorized that? Like, is that like, so like,
Because there's
is there a
fences around every
contract or
basketball court as well.
so
Yeah,
we haven't
it's just
authorized
because
it?
it's always been.
Right. Yeah. I've seen the same thing. I've noticed that, and I was just curious because I just happened to be looking at the parks in general, and I said, wait, there's advertisements there. So that's why I came out.
Yeah,
and
but you're asking two different things, right? The first one is
It's
that
two
it's
different
happening.
things, yes.
I'm getting the sense that you want to know how other people get in on that.
no, I'm just curious
on
as to
that
why
party.
it's only baseball. I never thought about like we're trying to get funding separately from that, and that may be a benefit to the village to say, hey, we can advertise for baseball. Why can't we put it at Nelson Park on a fence and raise money for the village? I'm not necessarily saying just.
Well,
But
I don't want to speak out of turn. We'll have to look into that, but I don't think that's going into the village general fund.
So that's why. I
No,
was
it's not.
curious.
But I will tell you that last year, under a different superintendent, it did come up, and because the chair and there were switches on the board, it sort of hung out there. I'm really happy. I don't think did it come up on Monday because I had to leave the meeting and then came back. But we should bring it back to the village manager and to Bill to say, hey, let's have a consistent policy.
And
was
it
where
did
we had
come up,
left it
and
off.
we got two different explanations.
Okay,
First,
well, there you go.
it went to youth organizations. Then it was no, it goes
Mhm.
to Jesse County. So I wasn't sure which was accurate. So
This is great. Thanks for bringing it though to our attention.
thank you for your time, and hopefully,
I just
Trustee Rivera?
thank you so much. Can you, if you have the time, send us an email? Just put it in writing that what you've seen, your photos,
Sure.
And that way we can just make sure that the
Yeah.
board and we can forward it to the rec advisory board just to have.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Not seeing anyone else.
Okay, next, finally, adjournment to executive session for matters of litigation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next week, please join us at Village Hall for our next work session. It'll be our last work session before the budget comes out. So I think we may have a couple of other similar types of conversations that we'll just put on the agenda, similar to what we just heard from Mr. Smith, from the community of things for us to consider as we enter into the budget cycle. We look forward to seeing you next week. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.